Продовжуємо роботу в Українському кризовому медіа-центрі. Наступна наша тема – результати маршу рівності KyivPride-2017. Нашими спікерами будуть Руслана Панухник, директорка громадської організації KyivPride, і Зорян Кісь, член правління громадської організації KyivPride. Прошу до слова.
Давай. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming to our briefing. We will tell you about the results of the yesterday's march, which took place in the center of Kiev, and we'll talk about we will sum up the Kiev Pride week. We'll talk about positive and negative things. You know, yesterday there was March of Equality in the center of Kiev. According to police, about 2,500 participants participated in it. According to our information, the number of participants was closer to 4,000, so we believe that the closest to reality figures are about 3,500 people. The march was taking place with the intensified protection of Paris. The opponents to the march got together in Shevchenko Park back on Saturday evening, and it was clear that it was impossible to use some force against them to free the way for the march. And 5 minutes before the march started, organizers decided to go by alternative route, and we discussed it when we were planning the march, and it was one of the options for the main route. So we have changed our route. Instead of Volodymyrska Street, we were moving by Tereshchenkovska Street, and the route of the march was 200 meters longer, but we managed to avoid the direct counter actions of the opponents. And from what I saw from in the media, I believe there were about 300, 400 of the opponents in Shevchenko Park. The march itself, during the march, we didn't have any significant incidents. The opponents took away one big rainbow flag and about 20 small ones. The opponents were not able to attack any one of the participants of the march, but Ruslana will tell you about some cases about what was happening after the march. We were trying to maximum communicate with people. We were requesting them to be very careful after the march, and we failed to avoid attacks after the march. I would like to mention that the law enforcement bodies organized very good protection, even despite the fact that the conditions were more difficult, but the police coped with with the smaller number of personnel, which means that the march itself was well planned, as well as all the protection measures. During preparation of the march and at the march, we saw new type of counteraction against us. These were information provocations which were taking place before and during the march, and to react at each one of them was impossible for the organization committee, but we have the position which will be made public on our website. I also would like to say that this march was a step forward, not just because almost twice more people participated in it compared to the previous year, not just because the route was longer and the march was very widely covered by the media, but we see that the public support of the rights of LGBT is growing, but also there were more representatives of LGBT community who participated in the march. People stopped to be afraid. People want to be themselves, to express their personalities, and for many people that was the first time when they managed to express themselves in the public space. Besides the march, we had, besides people just walking, we had 2 cars there, and that brings the march closer to the format that it should have in the civilized country, where there is the respect to human rights and the respect to diversity. And I would like to thank Elton John Foundation, because these cars, their participation was possible thanks to financial support of Elton John Fund. I would like to give the floor to Ruslana. I'm sorry for the tone I am speaking. That is related to this big tiredness.
Шановні колеги, колежанки,
Good morning, dear colleagues. I would like to continue to develop further the statements made by Zoryan. We also see the progress in support of our to all our events during the whole Pride Week in Kyiv. Not only the Pride Parade itself became closer to an ideal which we have in our imagination, but also other events of the week were attended almost by 1,000 of visitors, and LGBT community more actively participates in the events, which shows that for people it's important to speak about their concerns. Also, all the events of Pride Week had very meaningful content, although there were some negative aspects in this whole project. As of now, we have got information about 7 cases of attacks or aggression against participants of the Pride Parade, and in total 10 people suffered because of those attacks. And currently we keep in touch with them, trying to clarify what assistance we will be able to provide. Against the previous year, the number of attacks had grown, and the attacks were not only against participants of Pride Parade, but against a monitor who observed the parade. And and that attacks were not only from the side of our opponents, but from police. The journalist that monitor who observed the Pride parade was experienced violence from police officer. Of course, we will discuss this case with the police in order to prevent such accidents in the future. Despite all those cases of violence and that negative aspects, I would like nevertheless to mention that Kyiv Pride was held this year at a rather higher level. We received very positive response from LGBT community, from people who do not belong to LGBT community, from diplomatic missions, from human rights activist organizations. As you can see, this year the marching column was comprised from very different, from representatives of many very different communities. Many civic activists came to support LGBT community, and this march actually was the march for everybody, demonstrating visually that Ukraine is country for everybody. I would like to add what Ruslana mentioned. The slogan of this year, Kyiv Pride, was the country for everybody. We posted our political declaration on the website. This is official position of the organizational committee of Kyiv Pride. The committee had no wish and had no purpose to control any censorship in course of march. And I would like to state that organizational committee not obligatory shares the slogans which you can see among the participants. The Pride Parade is an open civic activity which allows everything which is not prohibited by Ukrainian legislation. And in advance, we warned leaders of all the groups that slogans calling to violence or to attacks or to something like that, to hatred, they are prohibited in line with legislation. And currently we observe that in society there is now very intensive debate of some aspects of the parade which disseminates some negative statements about us, which may result in a great tension in the future. So we won't comment further on this issue.
Ви кажете, що
Some clarification on figures. You know that there were 7 cases of attacks on activists and 10 people suffered. So in some incidents there were more than 1 person attacked. One incident had 2 people who became victims, and another one 3. So these cases, this happened after the march. People did not notice that someone was following them. Now, having analyzed these 7 cases and cases when aggressive violence was used against people, They were following people, they were following them for several hours. The march finished, people left the place of the march, and according to our advice, they took off all the symbols and they went to some public place, to cafe or to some trading center. They spent some time there and then they were going home and they were attacked. How many men and women among the victims? Most of them were men, and there's one woman. Any journalists? The journalists, do you have any questions? Once you have no questions, then one more clarification. Do you know what has become the why the force was used against the journalist by law enforcement? We did not talk to police. We got this information from internet, and we will make some conclusions when we hear both sides. Who attacked the observer? The observer was in Ozon code. He's the citizen from Belarus. There were some observers, foreign observers at the march. He was attacked at Kontraktova Ploshcha metro station. Most probably that's my assumption, but I believe that his jacket was saying observer, and that probably became the reason to attack him. Any questions? Once you have no more questions, thank you again. And we hope that the next march will be quieter.